For the first time in history, the sky is a battlefield. In World War I, brutal air combat with wood and canvas biplanes forges a new kind of warrior. The Dogfighter. In the freezing air at 15,000 feet, these fearless pilots duel to the death in dizzying aerobatic combat. Now you're in the cockpit as the first Dogfighters invent aerial warfare. Experience the battle. Dissect the tactics. Relive the dogfights of World War I. June 1917, 15,000 feet above La Selle, France, on the Western Front. A lone Albatros D-3 hunts for enemy reconnaissance aircraft and observation balloons. An icy 100-mile-per-hour wind stings exposed skin as the pilot searches the sky. He is 21-year-old Ernst Udet, destined to become a top German ace. Second only to Manfred von Richthofen, the Red Baron.
Here's someone who, by his own admission, had no qualms whatsoever about going head-to-head with an opponent in the interest of making the opponent flinch first.
Not long into the mission, Udet spots something.
From the west, a small dot approaches fast. At first, small and black, it grows quickly as it approaches. A Spad, an enemy fighter.
The aircraft has the distinctive brown markings and stub nose of a French Spad 7. The adversaries close, head on.
At the same height, we go for each other, passing at a hair's breadth. We bank into a left turn, then begins the circling.
Udet yanks the stick back and applies rudder. The simple but responsive cable and pulley controls snap the biplane into a tight bank. Like heavyweight boxers, the opponents test each other's defenses, holding back aggressive moves until they determine their enemy's skill.
It wasn't the first pass that really gave them the initial insight into how good of an opponent they were facing. It was the first turn. The technological advantages of fighter aircraft in World War I weren't in the normal vertical flight pass, it was the turn. How quickly did the guy turn? How quickly could he recover? How much altitude could he gain in the turn without stalling the aircraft?
The Albatros D-3, flown by Ernst Udet, is a fast-climbing and maneuverable fighter that dominated the Allies when first sent into combat. The French-built Spad 7 is sturdy. With a 150-horsepower Hispano-Suiza V8 engine and a top speed of 119 miles per hour. The Spad is 10 miles per hour faster than the Albatros and better in a dive. But the D-3 is more maneuverable and has a better rate of climb. Ernst Udet throws the stick left. The rushing wind and the staccato clatter of his Mercedes engine are deafening. He closes on the Frenchman.
He passes me, so close that his prop wash shakes me back and forth. I can make it out. View, it says there. View, the old one. That's Guinemer's sign.
It is France's ace of aces, Georges Guinemer. He's already brought down 30 German aircraft, including a close friend of Udet, Hutz Hainisch. Anger surges. Udet must take revenge for Hainisch's death. He'll attempt a half-loop, one of the first air combat maneuvers later named for German ace Max Immelmann. Udet will pull back on the stick, climb, go inverted, then roll out at the top, hoping to surprise Guynemer with a diving attack. Odette pitches up, craning his neck around to keep his eyes on Guynemer. To his horror, the French ace has anticipated his move perfectly and fires into Odette's machine.
Metallic hail rattles through my right wing plane and rings out as it strikes the struts.
Odette reacts through sheer instinct, choking back the panic while struggling to regain the advantage.
Drive your car at 60 miles an hour down the highway. Stick your head out the window. Now imagine you're going twice that fast. Now imagine it's 0 degrees outside, and it's hard to breathe, and it's cold, and the air is biting. Throw in the fact that your seat is on top of a 20-gallon tank full of aviation gas. That's what it was like in a World War I fighter plane cockpit.
Odette rolls and reverses. The tight turning radius of the D3 plays to his advantage. He manages to get Guynemer in front of him for a fleeting moment.
I'm sure he's coming down with the fangs out, blood in the mouth, and he's coming down to kill.
I push the button on the stick, and the machine gun remains silent. Stoppage.
His twin 7.92mm Spandau machine guns are jammed. It's a common problem for the first Dogfighters.
The gun jam is a huge problem. They can't put any weapon on the enemy at that point, and then they're a sitting duck.
Odette frantically pounds the gun, trying to clear the jam. It's no use.
At that point, he was just a target for Guynemer, so he was doing a lot more wider circling, a lot more climbing, trying to stall the plane, doing things that were much more evasive.
Odette and Guynemer roll right and pull into each other again. With his left hand, Odette tries to work the round through his machine gun. But then, disaster. From overhead, Guynemer observes the German's plight.
Now he knows what gives with me. He knows I'm helpless prey.
Odette cranks over into another left turn. He has no cockpit armor. He has no parachute. To be shot down from this altitude in World War I is certain death. Guynemer reverses for a final climactic head-on pass. Odette knows it is about to end.
He skims over me, almost on his back. Then it happens. He sticks out his hand and waves to me, waves lightly, and dives to the west in the direction of his lines. I fly home. I'm numb.
Incredibly, Georges Guynemer has spared Ernst Odette.
There are people who claim Guynemer had a stoppage himself then. Others claim he feared I might ram him in desperation, but I don't believe any of them. I still believe to this day that a bit of chivalry from the past has continued to survive.
Pilots like Ernst Odette and Georges Guynemer had benefited tremendously from technological improvements that had taken place in the 3 years since the start of the war.
World War I started 11 years after the Wright brothers flew at Kitty Hawk. When the conflict began, the aircraft that were used were nothing but glorified kites, powered with today what wouldn't even be a decent motorcycle engine.
Air combat first developed around observation aircraft sent into enemy airspace to spot artillery or track troop movements. Smaller aircraft, called scouts in World War I, were designed to attack these reconnaissance planes. Essential to this mission was the use of forward-firing machine guns, first added to scout planes in 1915.
For the first time, you can use the airplane as a platform. You point your airplane at your target and fire. And so it's far more accurate than trying to fire to the side or behind or that sort of thing.
The enemy soon sent up their own scout planes to protect the reconnaissance aircraft. And by the winter of 1915, dogfights became a fixture in the skies of World War I. German ace Werner Voss is a master of this new form of combat, racking up 48 kills by the fall of 1917. September 23, 1917. Werner Voss, flying a prototype Fokker triplane, wings into battle over the Ypres salient in Belgium. 15 miles to the southwest, 6 British SE-5s patrol the skies over the front. Soon, they will meet Werner Voss in battle. He will pit his Fokker triplane against the very best of the British Royal Flying Corps in one of the most famous dogfights of World War I. September 23, 1917. 6 British SE-5 fighters cruise over the Western Front near Houten, Belgium. The SE-5s are B Flight of 56 Squadron. They are led by Captain James McCudden, Britain's ace of aces. B Flight descends through a thick overcast at 9,000 feet. Below the clouds, unseasonably warm, humid air whips through their open cockpits.
They were looking for either fighter aircraft from the opposing side or to find an observation aircraft that was trying to take pictures on their side.
Flak bursts menacingly around them. The first anti-aircraft guns were nothing but field artillery, modified to fire vertically. McCudden quickly spots a German DFW, a 2-seat reconnaissance aircraft. The German is below B Flight and directly in front. McCudden pitches over into a dive to make a lightning-quick attack run. At 50 yards, he opens fire with a Lewis machine gun mounted on the top wing. The DFW's engine is hit hard. It drops out of the sky. But as B Flight pulls up, McCudden spots something in the distance.
We saw ahead of us, just above Polkapelle, an SC half spinning down, closely pursued by a silvery blue German triplane at very close range.
The SE-5's tormentor is German ace Werner Voss. He fires a burst into the British plane. B Flight looks on. The wounded SE-5 trails thick black smoke as Voss engages a second SE-5. Effortlessly, the triplane pitches up, wings over, and drops onto the SE-5's tail. With 56 Squadron looking on from above, the triplane has made quick work of 2 SE-5s. Voss's Fokker triplane is a prototype aircraft, though slower than most fighters on the front. Its 3 wings give it astonishing maneuverability. McCudden and 56 Squadron's Scout Experimental 5A, or SE-5A, operational in May 1917, is easy to fly and an extremely stable gun platform. Both planes are heavily armed with 2 machine guns. The SE-5, with a top speed of 130 miles per hour, is faster than the Fokker, but the Fokker is more maneuverable. B-Flight is now above and behind Voss, in perfect attack position. McCudden and Rhys-Davids will lead the attack. Keith K. Muspratt and VP Cronin will follow. The remaining 2 members of B-Flight stay up high as top cover. McCudden signals the attack by rocking his wings.
And it was at that point that one of the epic dogfights of World War I began.
Dan, we dived at colossal speed. I went to the right, Rhys-Davids to the left, and we got behind the German triplane together.
Confident of an easy kill, McCudden and Rhys-Davids open up. But Voss is anything but an easy target. He's been trained in the Dick de Bolke, the first codified air combat tactics, laid down in 1916 by German ace Oswald Bolke. Rule 5 states you should always turn into your enemy's attack and put him on the defensive. Voss will boot hard right rudder and spin his machine around 180 degrees. The bizarre maneuver takes advantage of the triplane's stunning agility.
The German pilot saw us and turned in a most disconcertingly quick manner. Not a climbing nor Immelmann turn, but a sort of flat half-spin.
The DR-1 triplane, having 3 wings, had an exceptional amount of lift to it. What it allowed the triplane to do was to basically do what's called a flat half-spin or an uncoordinated turn.
The SE-5s face a torrent of tracers. McCudden and Rhys-Davids pull into a steep climb called zooming in World War I. But Cronin's SE-5 is sluggish. He drops below Voss, his engines sputtering. McCudden, Rhys-Davids, and Muspratt are here, above Voss. Cronin is below the fight, easy prey for the German ace. Voss reverses and attacks Cronin. Cronin's sputtering engine coughs to life. He now turns directly into Voss and opens fire at 300 feet. Voss breaks off his attack, but he's not running away, even if it's 4 against 1.
Cronin takes on a role in the battle at this point, not unlike a matador. He is deciding to stay in the fight and to stay ahead of Voss and to act as a distraction.
Cronin is thrown from side to side within the open cockpit.
I don't know how many times I got in a burst head on, then dived in under him while all the while he was drilling at and into me. But damn it, why didn't the others take him on? Did they think I was showing off?
Above the fight, McCudden circles, looking for an opening. McCudden will wait for Voss to expose his 6 o'clock, then dive in and attack. Voss turns after Cronin. McCudden pitches down. He opens up with his Vickers machine gun. But in the blink of an eye, Voss reverses, returning fire with his twin Spandaus. McCudden hurtles past, then zoom climbs. Foss maneuvers bravely in spite of the odds.
In a group combat like that, when it's 1 against 4, the best place to be is in the middle of everybody else. Because they're circling around you trying to maneuver, but they have to be careful, A, they don't shoot each other, or B, they don't crash into each other.
But McCudden is determined. He again noses over. No sooner do McCudden's guns spark to life than Foss pulls his nose to bear. Hot German lead tears through McCudden's SE-5, shredding fabric and wooden wing spars. Foss appears invincible at the controls of the triplane.
The airplanes of that era were creatures of the air. You felt every input that you gave to the controls. You had cable connections to the ailerons, the rudder, the elevators. Not at all like today, where we have fly-by-wire jets where you move a control stick 1/8 of an inch and you get a knife-edge flight all of a sudden.
Foss's mastery of his machine finally catches up to VP Cronin. His SE-5 has taken severe damage.
He finally got too close to me, and I resorted in desperation to the old method of shaking a pursuing machine.
He puts his aircraft into something that looks like a spin, almost as if he's either been incapacitated or the aircraft has been somehow disabled. After a couple of revolutions, it appears that Voss actually buys it and lets him fly away.
Foss has knocked 3 SE-5s out of the fight and landed hits on any British pilot who's approached him. But now, 3 more SE-5s of 56 Squadron join the fray. A startling array of pilots now surround Werner Foss, all British aces. The light and agile triplane could easily climb above the combat and escape, but Foss savors the thrill of the dogfight. The German ace is destined for glory or death. September 23rd, 1970. In the midst of a wild melee, famed German ace Werner Foss holds his own against no less than 6 top British aces. Foss savors the combat, superbly demonstrating the lethal effectiveness of his prototype Fokker triplane.
His stick and throttle ability, his ability to fly it in a disciplined way in a fight, his ability to stay not calm, but to keep his wits about him in these very stressful situations. If he were flying with us today, he'd probably be one of the best.
British SE-5 pilot Richard Mayberry now zeroes in on Foss, diving on him from 6 o'clock. Foss breaks right to shake him off, but Mayberry is not thrown.
At this point in the battle, things get very complicated and very confused. An albatross joins the battle, which of course helps Voss considerably, at least numerically.
A German Albatross D3 has stumbled into the action, turning easily onto Mayberry's tail. Mayberry zoom climbs to shake the Albatross. The German pilot gives chase. But even worse, Foss latches on as well. Flying nearby, James McCudden and Arthur Rhys-Davids move in behind the Germans. And for a moment, the battle is transformed into a wild, twisting tail chase. The Germans are sandwiched between the British. The Albatross pitches up, zooms, then drops in behind McCudden and Rhys-Davids. The German yanks the stick back. The gut-churning loop puts him squarely behind the British.
Unfortunately for Rhys Davids, the Albatross manages to unload his guns into his airplane.
But Rhys Davids stays in the fight, the Albatross still on his tail. Now, at the head of the chase, Richard Mayberry will pitch up and loop back on the tail of the red-nosed Albatross. Mayberry yanks the stick back, throwing his SE-5 into a dizzying acrobatic maneuver. He fires from point-blank range. The wounded Albatross plummets. Voss is alone once again. He zooms, distancing himself from the slower climbing SE-5s. Voss looks down at the plane circling below. He could easily disengage and live to fight another day, but the enticement of the kill runs hot through his veins.
I think actually he got greedy, and he was looking at an opportunity to notch number 49 and number 50, and furthermore to close the gap on his friend and rival Manfred von Richthofen.
Voss dives back into the fray. He fires his Spandau machine guns into the nearest SE-5. Its engine pummeled. The British pilot dives out of the fight. The dogfight rages above no man's land. Voss handles the triplane superbly, pumping rounds into each of the attacking SE-5s. But it isn't enough.
The thing that's unfortunate for Voss is that he never really put enough planes out of commission to gain any sort of advantage. All the bullets he put into all those planes, he never drew a drop of blood from any of those opponents.
To the British, Voss seems invulnerable.
The triplane was still circling round in the midst of 6 SEs who were all firing at it as opportunity offered. And at one time I noted the triplane in the apex of a cone of tracer bullets from at least 5 machines simultaneously, and each machine had 2 guns.
The British are dumbstruck by the skill and tenacity of the German pilot in the Fokker triplane. But Werner Voss's luck is about to run out. Voss is here. British ace James McCudden is here. They'll streak in, head on. But Voss doesn't see another SE-5 coming in from the side. The SE-5 on the side watches the merge. Then opens fire. Rounds slam into the triplane's cockpit and fuselage. Voss stays aloft, but for the first time in the battle, he takes no evasive action. Then, Arthur Rhys Davids dives on Voss from behind. He empties his Vickers machine guns into the triplane. Voss does little to avoid the deadly arc of bullets.
Given how much he straightened up and how the ferociousness of his maneuvering had abated, that he was wounded, and he was probably starting to have some difficulty maintaining consciousness.
Rhys Davids fires another burst into the triplane, then pulls up. James McCudden is the only pilot to witness Voss's final moments.
When I next saw him, he was very low. I saw him go into a fairly steep dive, and so I continued to watch. And then saw the triplane hit the ground and disappear into 1,000 fragments. for it seemed to me that it literally went to powder.
After 10 minutes of ferocious combat, Werner Voss is dead at age 20. The German ace shot holes through every plane that attacked him, but incredibly, all returned to base.
As long as I live, I shall never forget my admiration for that German pilot. His flying was wonderful, his courage magnificent, and in my opinion, he is the bravest German airman who it has been my privilege to see fight.
German pilots and planes were always on the cutting edge of tactics and technology. They were a formidable foe for the Americans who took to the skies above France in 1918. The United States Army Air Service was equipped and trained by the French. Though some pilots had flown in the French Lafayette Escadrille earlier in the war, most had no combat experience. America's first Dogfighters will be tested as never before. September 14, 1918, Mars-la-Tour, France. American pilot Arthur Raymond Brooks, in a formation of 6 SPAD 13s, patrols over the Western Front. Soon, they spot 3 formations of German Fokker D-7s in the distance. The Americans move in. Instinctively, Brooks checks 6 and sees a formation of 12 enemy Fokkers.
I saw them as they neared us, but had no time to warn the leader of our flight, other than by just nosing down, gaining speed, and then turning to the right, over his head, and into the Fokkers.
Brooks's abrupt maneuver separates him from his flight. 4 of the German planes continue on to attack the rest of the SPADs, but 8 stay to fight the lone American. The sky explodes to a furious and deadly contest. September 14, 1918. American pilot Arthur Raymond Brooks wings straight into the fight of his life. He's surrounded by 8 German Fokker D-7s.
I was scared, but in spite of much high tension and yelling at the top of my voice, I calculated, by the nature of my training I suppose, that I would get as many Fokkers as possible before the inevitable.
Brooks is up against a lethal adversary, the Fokker D-7.
It is 100% universally felt that the Fokker D-7 was the best fighter aircraft of World War I. It had a wing that was thick, which allowed it to maneuver very quickly.
Brooks's SPAD 13, with a 220 horsepower Hispano-Suiza 8BC engine and a top speed of 138 miles per hour, is sturdy but plagued with engine problems. Both planes are armed with 2 forward-firing machine guns. The SPAD is faster and better in a dive, but the Fokker D-7 is more agile in a turning fight. Brooks initiates violent evasive maneuvers, skidding, looping, and diving, anything to prevent the circling Fokkers from getting a clean shot.
In the heat of the fight, Brooks was probably alternating between panic and the coolness of desperation. His mind was fixed on a number of things at once.
Adrenaline surges as he fights to stay alive amid the chaos of swirling airplanes. Suddenly, one Fokker dives towards him in a head-on pass. Desperate to save fuel and ammunition, Brooks heads directly at the Fokker, intent on ramming the German.
kid seems like a real dramatic last-ditch move. No telling what damage you're going to inflict on your own airplane with something like that.
Just before impact, the German peels under and dives away. Brooks reverses. To survive, he must keep moving. Another Fokker bores in head-on. Brooks speeds by.
I turned immediately on another, feeling that a vigorous offense was the best defense.
Brooks is here. A Fokker is firing on him here. In this kind of dogfight, Brooks must take a shot at every opportunity. As the German dives on him, Brooks will skid out of the stream of bullets. Then, when the Fokker passes underneath, Brooks will roll over the top of his enemy and bring his guns to bear. The German bores in. Brooks pulls hard back on the stick. The Spad leaps skyward.
I had just enough time to dip enough to see his features before I fired incendiaries, and he was aflame.
All he had to do was pull himself across without having to slow down or align fuselage. He could rake his gun right across the plane.
It's a brilliant move. Brooks's two .303 caliber Vickers make quick work of the Fokker. One down, but he's facing 7 more. Brooks spots a Fokker at 2 o'clock, starting a pass.
That out of his peripheral vision, he realized, and believe me, you realize these things in a nanosecond, that the geometry to rake somebody else was right there.
Brooks cranks to the right and peppers the Fokker with machine gun fire. Two down. But knocking the Hun aircraft down may play to Brooks's disadvantage.
It was being surrounded that saved me thus far. The Germans could not shoot at me without being in their own way most of the time, or bringing one of their own aircraft into the line of fire.
The Germans just saw 2 of their squadron mates go down. They're angrier now. In terms of flying more aggressively, I'm sure it's like, we're going to finish this SOB right now.
The 6 other Fokkers drone in like angry hornets, determined to knock the Spad out of the sky. September 14, 1918. American pilot Arthur Raymond Brooks has knocked out 2 German Fokker D-7s. But 6 remaining fighters close in. Brooks must stay aggressive and constantly on the move, never remaining a stationary target for long.
One of the things we typically do when in an outnumbered situation, you want to switch a lot. Work on it and switch back to somebody else.
White tracer ribbons could cut through between my wings often, so close that if I reached out my hand, the stream of bullets would have cut it off.
Brooks pitches up to evade another attack, but as he rolls over the top, his engine sputters. His prop windmills slowly. He's run out of fuel in his main tank. He switches to the auxiliary tanks located in the center section of the top wing.
I stared at the blade
and instinctively nosed down just as an enemy burst swept in front of my forehead, shattering my windshield and clattering into my right gun, rendering it useless except for single shots.
He's in what's called the outer stratosphere of tension and anxiety and fear. In this environment, you don't have time to think. Too much is going on that's very heavy, so you're reacting. What happens is you fall back to your level of training in a situation like this.
Brooks manages to restart the engine. As he dives for airspeed, he gets lucky.
2 more Bosch planes in their tactical work happen to get in the way of my now single line of fire.
Brooks opens up. White-hot incendiary bullets, a new kind of ammunition designed to set enemy aircraft on fire, rip through the Fokkers.
This was still too much attention to suit me. I figured the danger was greater for me now than with the whole swarm, because there was less chance of the Germans getting in their own way.
Brooks decides to exploit the only advantage his SPAD 13 has over the Fokker D7, diving speed. His 220 horsepower SPAD can outdive and outrun the Fokker D7. He bobs and weaves as the Germans lob tracers at him.
He knows that if somebody's back behind him shooting, if he continues straight and level, they're going to hit him. So he's trying to skid the airplane and just make himself unpredictable to get out of the plane of those bullets.
Finally, the Germans break off. The grueling dogfight is over.
I don't know how I got back. One incendiary bullet had burned itself out in the main spar of my upper wing. 5 bullets went through my fuselage within 4 inches of my back. Holes were scattered all over my poor SPAD. The aircraft had to be salvaged.
During the incredibly intense action, Brooks has fought off 8 Fokker D7s, the most advanced fighter of the war, while downing 4 of them. It's a stunning achievement, but under the victory rules of the day, Brooks is only credited with 2 kills. World War I ended less than a month after Brooks's epic battle. The 4 years of war saw astonishing leaps in aviation.
It's been guesstimated that in those 4 years, the extent of engineering and technical and operational knowledge that was gained was equal to what might have been 15 or 20 years of peacetime development.
By the end of the war, you had aircraft with 200 plus horsepower engines. You had aluminum frames on the aircraft, whereas before everything was wood. You had supercharged engines, and you had pilots using parachutes and oxygen. Like it or not, war enhances technological growth out of necessity.
Modern-day fighter pilots streak into battle, sheathed in electronics and armed with incredible weapons that strike beyond the horizon. But these modern warriors are indebted to the men who flew in open cockpits and fought their foes face to face, inventing the dogfight.